Evening, Michael.
Good evening, yeah, or
Uh,
afternoon here.
Afternoon here. Yeah, fun time difference. You're living in, I'm going to
St.
say wrong,
Louis.
even though you've just told me how to pronounce it. It's St. Louis or St. Louis,
It's St. Louis, yes, yeah,
not like Judy Garland in the film Meet Me in St. Louis, and everyone
that's
in that
right.
film for that matter.
Yeah, maybe it changed over time, but it's one of those. It's like San Francisco was always, don't call it Frisco. That was not allowed.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, you know the way these mad things happen.
So the last time I read an interview with you,
Hmm.
you were still living in San Francisco, or that particular interview anyway.
Yeah.
So, how long were you in San Francisco for? This will have a bearing on what we're going to talk about in a bit in relation to
Okay.
your art. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe 17 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a long time. And
Yeah.
then a little further north for a little bit
Yeah.
longer. And then we moved here last year. So, but yeah, San Francisco, I lived there longer than anywhere else I've lived in my life. So I got a great deal of affection for that place. It's an amazing city.
And am I right in saying it did influence your art, including some of the Bond covers, which is obviously the main thing we're going to talk about today, but I'm
Right.
sure we'll end up talking about other things. It must have influenced your art if you were there for 17 years.
Well, I think that my first ever understanding of San Francisco was the psychedelic poster scene from the 60s. I found that when I was young, and that kind of opened up the idea of what San Francisco was.
Mm,
And then I went there when I was maybe 26, 27, something like that, and it all just immediately made sense. Like I've never
wow.
really had that feeling. So definitely when those original covers that I did back in 2007, the kind of psychedelic type, the mix of type and design,
Mm.
that was the idea that kind of awoke when I was young. And so I suppose that was the San Francisco influence,
Wow.
really. You know.
So if you haven't read the description on if you're watching this and you haven't read the description on the video, or if you're listening to this and you haven't read the description, I'm here today with Michael. I'm terrible with pronunciations today. Is it because I've only ever read interviews with you? Is it
Yeah.
Gillette or is it
It's
Gillette?
it's Gillette. It's actually
Gillette.
Lewis. Gillette.
Okay, so I'm here today with Michael. Anyway, who James Bond fans, of course, will know the name because that's another Bond reference, unintentional there. So Michael, of course, did some amazing Bond book covers back in 2007, which were released in 2008 for the Fleming centenary. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he did several Bond projects in between, including for the German continuation covers, which I was vaguely aware of, but in preparation for today, I went back through all of those, and I'd love to talk about those as
Right.
well. And he's about, at time of recording this, he's about to have the new set of Fleming covers released imminently, which are astonishing. And I'm sure you've seen all the feedback online, Michael, uh, and it's just been amazing, to be honest. Completely deservedly so. Yeah, absolutely. What a relief. If you wouldn't mind, though, can we just go back to the 2008 releases because
Oh, yeah.
obviously, and I'm just going to embarrass Michael here. I just plucked off the wall of my top floor, just next to the book room where I often record these episodes. I alternate between here and there. So just outside that room is, I think my husband bought me this for a significant birthday. I can't remember which one it was, and then we had it framed and popped on the wall. So this is one of your limited edition prints of those covers, and
Yeah.
they look great on the covers. But oh my gosh, do they look amazing as prints? So this has
Well,
been
thank you.
fully deserved. This has been on our wall for, I think it might have even been my 30th birthday. So it's been on our wall for quite some time.
Right. Lovely.
And so I walk past that every day. So
That's great.
massive fan, Michael. So this is such a moment for me to be able to chat
Oh,
to you about that art.
well, I love the thought that my art is in people's houses and that, just as you say, that people see it all the time. And, I absolutely love that idea. So thank you. And thank your husband for but ponying up, that's great. So
I was actually looking through your website again in preparation for today, and I almost spent a large sum of money on several other things on the website. So if you are interested,
yeah,
then head over to Michael's website because you can get a set of all. You actually did 15 of them, didn't you?
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did
And
Ultimate Solace as an after for maybe for the German market. So yeah,
wow, it's lovely. It's Quantum Society's in pink, isn't it?
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
there are all these, I think in previously you've said you purposely went for colors and you went for rainbow hues, and that ties in what we were saying about kind of San Francisco and
yeah,
psychedelia, that art of the 60s. And am I
yeah.
right in saying you originally your inspiration was the Casino Royale 1967, which I'm a
Right.
massive defender of that film, but that was a
As am
mass.
I.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? Really?
yeah. It looks great. It has its moments, you know.
Sounds
Uh,
great.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Burt Bacharach. It's great. So there's a lot going for it, but there's also a lot. I think it's that shock of the expectancy of Bond, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
so just talk us through that because some people might know some of these stories already if you've
right.
followed Michael's career closely. But it's yeah. How did all that start then?
Well, it was a job from Penguin, and it was a couple of designers there, John Hamilton, who was the art director forever there, and John Gray, who were two sort of titans of the book world. And I just got an email from John Gray saying, "Are you interested in doing this?" And he referenced that image and said it was a Bond-esque project. And I said, "Yeah, it sounds all right, sounds interesting." And then once I'd agreed and signed whatever was required, it was the Bond thing. So that was all they gave me that and said, "We're looking at this idea, have at it and see what you can do." So I, so it was, prescribed as that as the idea. And I just thought, well, they're going to have to be different. So the colors came from me so that
Mm.
bit was for me. And then I just basically, it was such a short, I think it was maybe a month and a half, 2 months tops with a lot of other stuff going on. So it was very quick. Um, and, I did it and just thought, oh, that's just another job, nice job, but just
Mm-hmm.
another job. But then it was the introduction into this whole world of, folks like you who, I call it the Bondiverse, this whole, something that I kind of theoretically knew must exist, but then it became a, very real thing in my life. So, so that's how it happened. It was commissioned from back in the day,
So since 2008, and it's all about to kick off again if it hasn't already kicked off, Michael.
right.
All these rabid Bond fans.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll apologise for the Bond community in advance. So is it sort of has it never really gone away since 2008?
Not really. It has, well, once I started making the prints, then it came back to
Mm.
be something that was just really a regular thing in my life. So no, it never really has gone away. And the new ones, I suppose, the genesis of the new ones was people kind of that I interacted with through Bond saying, when are you going to do another set? And I'd say, well, it doesn't really work like that. It's not I can't just decide that. And after saying it a bunch of times, I realized that, I had a relationship with the estate by
Mm.
then through the prints and licensing them. And it is a little family, that
Hmm.
group. So I realized that I was just saying that, and I probably could pitch an idea, but I didn't really, for ages I would always just go, oh no, I've done them and that's that. But then I had an idea, then after a while, something, I asked myself, okay, if you were going to do it again, what would you do if you could do anything? So that's kind of how it arose, but in a very different way to the first set. So
Did you have
yeah.
longer to do this set?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I pitched the idea, I think in 2018. So that's six count them years ago. So I pitched them, and then COVID and all that happened, I think there were, initially the response was, yeah, these are, they were quite different too. It's like gone through several different generations, this project. But I got good feedback for them, and it was a possible, like the door was like kind of cracked open. Oh yeah, these are interesting. This might be something. And then, you know, I suppose the self-publishing of the Fleming estate.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think that was actually when I pitched. I don't think that was actually happening yet. So
So
it was, yeah.
no, I was just going to say that's really interesting because I was going to ask you. I read an interview, I think it was with you in 2019, and you'd
Mhm.
hinted at
Right.
something that you were working on to do with Bond. And I
Yeah.
thought, is this actually this project? So is
Yeah.
that correct?
It is. Yeah. It is. They
Wow.
were. There's very little of that. Maybe there's one or two that have survived from that first iteration.
Mm.
And they were much more abstract. I think maybe I did 8 to start off with to pitch, but they were much more. They were the more abstract ones. I think Thunderball is one of them. So they were more
Mm.
patterns. I had the idea in a block printing workshop. I thought, oh yeah, really simple graphic, maybe just geometrical shapes,
Mm.
mid-century feel to it. So that was the kind of, oh, that would work as as a cover. It would work online as a tiny little thumbnail, and it would work as a print because it's set up to be that idea. So that was the first iteration of them, and then I think I just put them to one side. Just always thought, oh, they're out there. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. And then I suppose 2021, I was teaching a class at in San Francisco, the California College of Art, like a concept class, how to have ideas, visual ideas, and stuff like that. And I every week I turn up and because the tendency for us all is just to have one idea and then to grip onto it till your knuckles
Mm.
turn
Mm.
white.
Mm.
And then if anyone comes near you and asks, tries to take it away from you, that was the way I saw it with the students. I knew I was just the same. We all do like that. And I would say to them week after week, your brain will give you as many ideas as you ask it. If you ask it for one, then it'll give you one, and then it'll defend it with a big moat. But so I would, after, and that class was much more about, yeah, visual ideas that are, combining things, twofers, I call them, right? Two states at the same time. These kind of very distinct design ideas that have grown up over time. And I realized that I wasn't following as all good teachers, I wasn't following my own directions that I was giving the students. So I had once that class finished, I've been thinking about it during that class, and the
Mm.
2 weeks after it finished, I went back and I did another bunch, and they were very different. They were all much more ideas, much more conceptual
Mm.
pieces. So that was the next phase, and then I suppose I didn't hear anything for another couple of years, so I didn't do anything again till finally in last year I got the green light, and then this year I finished them all off. So they're over a long gestation and several different ways of thinking. So that's how they've arrived in a very, really unusual way. From never have I ever had a job that's worked like that.
Mm.
So generally, like the first time I did them, like a rodeo illustrator. So you just blow in, do whatever is required, and then it's off to the next town. But this was very different. So
I'm sure most people listening or watching this will already be following you on Instagram anyway. But I'll put a link when this goes out. I'll put a
yeah.
link in case people aren't following it because one of the things that I'm absolutely loving at the moment, Michael, is seeing you talked about the iterations of those ideas. I'm not sure
Mhm.
how far you've gone back on it because some of the ideas that you've put on your Instagram,
Yeah.
the are quite different. Well, the idea is there but
Mhm.
they actually look quite different.
Right.
So the Diamonds of Forever one I thought was particularly interesting the way the colors work with that one, with more of a
Mhm.
Union flag in.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you do check those out. So,
Mhm.
but what you just said about them being so abstract and there being an idea behind each of them.
Mhm.
Wow, the amount of that makes sense now. Now you've explained this has been basically a 5-year project. You've had all of that percolating through your head.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. and just the idea of Bond is such a universe of imagery that we've all grown up with anyway. It's all in there, right? Like a stick of rock
Mm, mm.
through us that have grown up with it. So many iconographic points, you know.
Yeah.
So it's easy, you know, I wasn't working on it all that time. It was little bursts of time of doing it, but you're right, you know, that your unconscious is where
Mm,
all the actual hard work goes on. So yeah, I think that's why they've ended up the way they have. I look at them and I'm like, wow, there's quite different approaches going on within a set, you know.
mm,
That's why, because of that length of time, you know, just a long, you know, probably been through. Yeah, I don't know how many versions of things I did, but some of them there's like five, six different versions,
mm.
you know. So,
And it's not just the covers, because you've done the back covers too,
right. Yes,
and you've done the end papers, and
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it's not a small project.
No, it's not. No, but I mean that was yeah, because there was I had a sketchbook just full of ideas, so there was always stuff to pull on for the backs and for the end pages and things like that. And I felt, you know, once Ian Fleming was starting to, I mean, that's the opportunity with them self-publishing is it's a different world. You know, you're not dealing
Mm,
with a designer and an art director and a marketing departments that are going to come in and tell you that, you know, everything has to be read, you know. So much more open relationship with them and kind of, I think, trust, you know, I think they trusted me with it, you know, and I want to because of my well, I always want to do the best I can, but because of the relationship with the Bond fans, I know it has to be worthwhile. I mean, my obsession is the Beatles, right? So
mm,
whenever something happens with the Beatles that's kind of not full love, I get really, you know, like what a missed opportunity. You know, I feel, you know, it's such a personal feeling that
yeah.
you have for your object of desire. So
Mm,
I really wanted to make it, you know, if you're going to publish these books again, you know, make them something that's different and make them something that has, you know, hopefully has, I guess, value for money. But just like a lot of, I think I want people to see that, you know, I put that attention in, and I hope people enjoy it, you know.
mm.
But I want to reflect that, you know, I want people to understand that I really respect people's affection for James Bond and, you know, want to service it as you know well as I can really. So
So you've left me with a horrible quandary though, Michael, because I love all the multicolored approach, but people who follow my Instagram will know I organize all my books in the main shelf anyway by color.
oh,
Because for some reason I do sometimes go a bit high fidelity and consider doing it autobiographically or
right,
some other kind of arcane system, but I for some reason I remember books by their color. So when I
okay,
get the new hardbacks that you've done
right,
amazing art for, I'm gonna
right.
yeah, they're going to be gonna have to decide whether to dot them around the colored shelves or whether just to have them all lined up in publication order. So I don't
Right,
know. I don't know what I'm
right.
going to do.
Oh, David, that's unfortunately that's up for you there. See those kind of considerations, you know, I just never think of anything like that. The idea that, you know, it's amazing that you're gonna so that must look incredible. I wish I had you know, the patience to do that to I can't even get them to line up in height or anything like that, you
Oh,
know.
it's probably some undiagnosed condition I've got, which leads me to do
Right, okay.
whatever gets us through the day. Yeah,
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. It's not hurting anybody.
um, what I mean, as I am a Bond book collector, there are people who take it to the nth degree and have like 25, 30, 40 probably different versions of each book. I think the most I've got is oh God, I've got at least 8 copies of You Only Live Twice or something like that because that's my favorite Bond novel.
Right.
But I'm not as extreme as some people, but I don't think
Right.
I don't think most people are going to be, or anyone is going to be able to resist buying these ones, because sometimes they come out, or and you go, am I going to buy this whole set? And to be perfectly honest, I usually end up buying the whole set. I've already
Right.
told my husband I need the whole set for Christmas, please, and
Okay.
that will be my Christmas present.
Oh,
Um,
that's fantastic.
but I was my current favorite set of the novels, actually, and when I was reading up on some interviews you'd done previously, and I was like, yes, I think we're on the same page with this one. Am I right in saying this was your favorite range of
Absolutely. Yeah.
covers?
Yeah.
So, if you're listening to the podcast version, I'm holding up the pan photograph editions from I think it must have been early 60s, because these are my dad's copies of the books. And strangely enough, you said in an interview that the first Bond books that you read were this set, and they were your dad's as well.
Exactly right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and that cover there
Yeah.
is
Live and let
is
die.
referenced on the back of the Live and Let Die Now. I completely, you know, was homaged it. Let's say that politely. And that was a conscious thing to do, because that was, yeah, that's how I was introduced to them. They would, my dad had them all in the house, and they ended up in my bedroom in a drawer. So that's how I first read them. But
Mm.
I mean, that's the interesting thing with the kind of where people, it's a difficult thing to deal with, and it's a beautiful thing to deal with, is where people enter the Bond world in the past with such a heritage. And that will, like, to me, those are, they mean a lot to me, those covers, because that's where I entered.
Mhm.
And, for other people, it'd be something completely different,
Mhm.
So those all, depends where people land, what their intro is. But I mean, I love those. They are the most, you know, I suppose closest to kind of mid-century feel to them. They feel much more sophisticated, I think, than a lot of the more sort of pulpy stuff. Um,
Do you
yeah,
see,
they're really,
and you trace you'll have to excuse me, I'm not an artist, I'm a
yeah.
words person.
All
But
right.
so you trace a kind of connection with the sort of central image idea that chopping went with, is that right?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, he defined a lot of it, really, didn't he? He nailed a lot of
Mm.
it down. The iconography that's there. Also, there's a kind of that trompe l'oeil feel of his, like the
Mm.
size of things are the same size they would be in, in real life. Some of it, that's kind of a feel that they have there, which I've done a bit because it's a physical thing, like the bullets on the back of the man with the golden gun. I'm like, that could
Mm.
feel like they were sort of trickling through your fingers. They're the right size, that these ideas of like, if you're going to have a physical product, make it to be fun to interact with and things like that. I think Dickie Chopping definitely had that feel to his things, like the eye, a Bond's eye. It's the right size, right? I'm pretty sure. So yeah, but those first, I mean, that pan set is just,
Mm.
I came back to Britain not long ago. I went to Dunster Castle, and they've got a beautiful library there. And the only book that you can see anything other than the spine of is one of those, and you can just spot it from a
Wow.
mile off. It just reads so well. Um, so yeah, they're just, yeah, they're always would be a reference point. It
They're
seemed
they're slightly surreal, aren't they, as well? And I think you admire the surrealism of chopping too. I
yeah,
think you cited once the Octopussy one, which, if you've never seen the chopping Octopussy, it's got essentially I'm presuming a dead fish, because it's got flies swarming all over it, which is
right.
obviously a very common chopping motif. I actually read
Yeah,
one of Chopping's novels that he wrote,
fly.
and that's an intense experience.
I'll bet.
And but flies feature prominently. And
Hmm.
there's like a conch shell in the background
Right.
as well, and it's just this. It's quite an uncanny, even creepy cover, that one. There's not
Right.
really any, because sometimes you see Bond covers and they are sort of comforting in some sense,
Right.
but chopping is very much on the kind of surrealist, almost a bit Dali-esque. Again, I'm no
Yeah.
artist, so I don't know if that's a valid comparison side of things.
Yeah.
Did you kind of get any license um to kind of go there? Because I think some of your covers are kind of going into that sort of realm, the new ones that you've done?
I think so, yeah. Just
Yeah.
from the whole, yes, what's gone before is what,
Mm,
it's definitely all part of it, right? It's not reinventing the wheel, it's
mm,
putting a new set of rims on it, right? And maybe things that you've loved, just refreshing them and maybe
mm,
presenting them in a slightly different way. And those kind of twofers, those two state ideas where you look into it and see something else, I guess those are kind of, they can put a new spin on things because, like the man with the golden gun is a golden gun with a girl on it. It's not high concept, but mm, brought in a different way. It's how you bring them together that can make things interesting. And,
mm,
you know, um, but yeah, his work really had that. I mean, he did really well in reflecting the sort of darkness of the Bond books, I think. I mean, I've seen that cover for The Fly, his novel. That's a
mm,
great cover. That is a really
mhm.
great cover. But yeah, he obviously had a kind of macabre fascination,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, my stuff is much more poppy, because that's where I've come from. A lot of my work has always been music graphics and things
Mhm.
like that. That's kind of where I grew out of. So it's always, I'm not, I like bright colors and very unchopping things like that. His is always, there's not much brown in my work.
No.
His is a lot of wood grain and,
Yeah, a
you know,
lot of wood grain. Yeah.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
just see
Whenever I
nibbling away.
photograph a new Bond book, I put it on my kitchen table and I go, "Oh, that's a little bit Richard Chopping."
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He must have been just master stippler, tippler, going away there. But I think everybody's going to reference, he was the original,
Mm,
right? The original, and he did a great job. Obviously,
mm.
he really defined that universe.
I'm getting the feeling that you're someone, and this is also based off some interviews I've read with you previously, who doesn't like putting things in boxes very much,
Right.
kind of like, in terms of artistic styles and that. It's just, it's what feels right and mixing styles. I think and you mentioned about the intersection of music as well. So
Yeah.
I did read, and I don't know if this is a scurrilous rumor, Michael, but someone, or it might even have been yourself, said something like that you might have been kicked out of art school on a bit of an academic bone of contention, or it was possibly another reason. I've read multiple versions of this,
Yeah.
so
It's not quite true. I got put on probation. That's what
oh, okay.
so, yeah, I got put on probation for a year. So I had to show up every month and show everything I'd done, which was, I don't think it was fair, really, to be honest with you. I didn't do anything wrong, honest God. You know, I think it was because it was a bit because it was an illustration and graphic design course,
Mm,
and I was not in a nowhere middle ground. It's interesting because I'm just the same, I'm still at this intersectional space. So I was sort of nowhere in that school. So it kind of allowed me to go under the radar and do what I wanted to do because I wasn't quite in either department. But then they realized that someone blew the whistle on me that I wasn't sitting in the right desk, and
mm,
that's what sort of brought the heat on me. So, but that was that was just the way it was back then. Well, I mean,
mm,
it's interesting. Still, I don't know. No, it's probably changed a lot. But I did these covers. I sent them to print. I'm an illustrator. I've illustrated for years, but I've always
mm.
had that sort of design thing too. So yeah, that's what got me in trouble back in the day. Yeah, I wasn't playing quite by the rules, but
You,
it's all right.
you just said that you're constantly kind of at that intersection. Someone, that kind of suggests a sort of unwillingness to be pigeonholed and that sort of thing. And I think you've said previously that you're an artist that likes to shift styles, and that
Yeah,
kind of fits really well with Bond because, and
yeah,
you also said a little while ago that we all have this. Particularly British people, we all have this cultural connection. Most of us have a cultural connection with James Bond, but
mhm.
our concept of Bond is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So is that why you think you're constantly drawn back to Bond as well?
Yeah, maybe a bit. I think when I did the first set, it did really have an outsized sort of effect on my career,
Mm,
which I didn't expect, because and that because of the way they were, I suppose I've always approached everything a bit like a designer that, what's
Mm,
the best solution for this rather than what's, giving £0.5 of my work to something. And then, that's always what I've been most interested in, being inspired by something and
mm,
creating something that maybe I haven't done before.
mm.
Um, but yeah, I've completely lost my
No,
train of
it
thought
was
there.
Bond constantly evolving, and you're constantly
Right.
evolving, aren't
Yes. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. But that, yeah, so those covers, after that, I got a lot of requests to do pin-up work and things like that. And I wasn't really, I was just like, I'm not really a pin-up artist. It's just like this was the right solution for this,
you?
right? It wasn't like, oh, in my heart, because there's so many great people that do that, and that's their thing that they do. But I always like to be like, oh, what does it inspire? What could be different? What could be brought, you know, what ideas could be brought to something could, dictate how it looks rather than
Mm.
just like, oh, my work always looks like this. I suppose, the Beatles, David Bowie, people like that were always what I loved musically, and they shifted all the time, and that's what I thought that creativity was, that I suppose that's where my compass got set, and growing up in the 70s and 80s, those kind of style tribe times where everything was shifting so quickly, you know, and my music graphics was where I came in. So, I knew that music had a style to it and it was always evolving, it was always changing, everything was moving so rapidly there in the early 80s in Britain, so that was what I grew up in, right?
Hmm.
I think maybe now with everything, everyone's attention is, I see people get sort of not stuck, but they just hone the same thing over and over and over again because it's harder to get attention is harder. So if you're a scatter doing different stuff all the time, I think if David Bowie his career was now, and people would be like, well, let's have five Ziggy Stardust, still no
Yeah.
one's interested in that anymore. And then, good luck to you, But I think
It's
it's
it's funny you say that because as you were talking, I thought, oh my, I've realized something about kind of my personal taste, and I'm a Beatles fan to the point that I've got all the albums upstairs. I
right,
don't know them inside out, back to front. I couldn't
right.
tell you what was track three on Rubber Soul or anything that to that kind of degree. But at the same time, um, uh, I've realized my favorite and my most played Beatles albums are the first one and the last one. And
Right,
my favorite Fleming books are actually Casino Royale, and I know it's not quite the last one, but
right,
nearly You Only Live Twice. And
right.
I reread those two so much, and I
Oh,
re-listen to those Beatles albums because they're almost by a different artist,
right.
and I was like, people look at your work from 2008 and they look at your work from 2024. I don't know if anyone would be able to connect
Mhm,
those. Some people obviously be able to connect the dots. But even to the point that, you did those German covers in, was it
mhm.
2014 to 16, the John
Something like
Gardner
that. Yeah.
ones? And actually, even though superficially people might say
Mhm.
it's still a attractive girl and all the rest of it, they do look so different from each other.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did try. I mean, with those German ones, I don't know whether it was them. Someone asked, and maybe the American publisher asked me to do them and do them exactly the same way as the
Oh, really?
scenery ones. I was like, no, that's not
Mm.
good. So I tried to find a different way when the German folks asked, they wanted something similar. But some of those covers I like. Um, but as a set, they don't have the depth of,
Okay.
they don't hang together for me the same way. And I suppose that was, when I decided to do this, to have a go at doing this set. Also, I've had two daughters in the interim between 2017 and now. And the youngest daughter's always like, she needs a better top. Why, like these kind of questions. And I'd be like, oh, I haven't got an answer for you. The last couple of German ones I did, I mean, one of them's wearing a balaclava. She's so covered up. Just as a joke to my child, I'm just like, look, how much more covered up can this be? But I guess what I'm saying is that, like, because that became a little bit known for that, I wanted to
Mm.
do. I thought, wouldn't it be an interesting trick to do a set that's completely different, that feels like a very different mindset that's
Mm-hmm.
going on for my own peace of mind to be
Mm-hmm.
like, that was part of it. I thought, well, because because Bond is such an influence. I mean, I think like of John Barry, everything that he did in his career, and he was still the guy that wrote the James Bond theme, even though he didn't quite. But you know what I
Few other
mean?
things, you know.
Yeah. But it was always, it's such a powerful
Yeah.
cultural force, that I thought, well, wouldn't that be interesting to do something totally different than the
Mm-hmm.
original ones, really, mostly different anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but that's interesting. You saying that about the books and reading that change. I used to feel like that with the Beatles, that double red and double blue. I just look back and forth when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even tell who was who. How has that guy become this guy? You know, it was, I could totally understand that feeling.
Yeah. It's a short period, relatively speaking, as well with the
Oh,
Beatles, isn't it?
yeah, insane. Like 6 years, 7 years. Incredible. Amazing.
So I'm not going to do the predictable thing unless you really want to, and
Okay.
ask you to choose your favorite of the new covers,
Uh-oh.
unless you really really want to. But perhaps a more interesting question might be which is the one that has the most interesting kind of story behind it. I'm sure you've had lots of thoughts, and I tend to have my best thoughts when I'm usually in the shower or driving when I don't have a pen in front of me, so I have
Right.
to run out and whatever. But are there any kind of interesting stories behind some of them?
Well, I think Casino Royale was the one that went through the most changes, really,
Really?
because that book is so well, the first one, and it's so, it's such an interesting kind of existential crisis of him in the middle of it. So
Mm-hmm.
it started off, it went through. I just kept going, well, it's not quite it yet, and talking with Simon, he wanted it to be reflecting the kind of the carpet beater scene. So he wanted, something of that in it. And I'd done all these things that were, like one I really liked was just a stack of poker chips on their side. It just became a completely abstract thing. It looked great great as a print for sure. Really interesting feel to it, but not for a book
Yeah.
jacket, not for that book either. So the carpet beater did end up on the back in the end. I made a sort of heart-shaped
Right. Yeah.
carpet beater, but with almost like a noose in the middle of it. I know she didn't hang herself, but it was that sort of feeling of how to get sort of this pleasure, pain, love,
Mm-hmm.
agony thing in there. So that one was that was interesting. Just going, it was elusive, and oddly enough, the first set that I did, the test I did was Casino Royale, and I did a
Mm-hmm.
finished version of it, which ended up as a stamp, I think, or like a first aid cover, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Got printed as that. But in the interim, the last one I did of that set was Casino Royale again, because I'd learned how to do it by the end of it. And I was like, that one doesn't look so good. I'm going to redo it. It was too late for the stamp. It had already been printed. But so yeah, in an odd way, I did with this set, the last one I did was Casino Royale. It was the first
Wow.
one I tried, and it was the last one that I took that length of time to get right, or to get, the idea behind it. I mean, it is a girl. It's the closest one to my
Mm-hmm.
other set,
Mm-hmm.
but because Vespa, I wanted it to be like a trickle or like a flag, and she's just like, I wanted to pick her to be like almost like a tiny hope that he could escape through her, just this slither almost
Yeah.
disappearing. That was the idea, you know. I wanted something that's just that was my justification for that image of a girl, in that scene was that, yeah, she's like the existential hope of his way out of killing for the rest of his life. And it's so brief a glimpse. And then, most of it is just the fields of color.
Mm.
So, maybe that one had the longest journey. Some of the other ones were just immediate, the first idea and the 500th idea are the best. So, some of them. Goldfinger was pretty much first idea, just came. It's just like, oh yeah, that looks strong. So,
Mm.
and it's always, it's always fun, especially in this AI world where you can ask for everything to come to you immediately, right? To have like something where you've really gone through a lot of desert, you know.
But you've got to have the in with AI, not a fan personally, but
Yeah.
with
Well,
call me old fashioned, but you've got to know what prompts to put in with AI. And that's what, with these covers, they've like that concept,
mm,
it's the that's the important thing, isn't it? I love the fact that actually that the carpet beater was on the back when the covers were originally unveiled and we only had the front covers. I was
right.
excited, and then when you started putting the back covers out,
Mm,
and I think if they haven't done so already, I've seen them, but I think Ian Fleming Publications is about to show all of the back covers
right.
to everybody. And some of those back covers are they're almost like they are like concepts in themselves. So
Right.
you've got way more than 14 ideas going on those
Right.
books, Michael. So
Yeah.
so yeah, wow.
That's good, entertainment, right? Value for money. You
Totally
want
value for money. I actually think they're a bargain, these new hardbacks, to be
oh,
honest. I'm sure collectors would be paying a lot more for them, but I know that my husband's relieved anyway, so he doesn't have to fork out an absolute fortune
right,
for them this
right.
time.
Well, that's good.
So,
I hope they reach, Bond fans and,
mm,
the regular customers too, I want them to succeed for all of us, for the whole book idea, but for Fleming publishing themselves, I'm really rooting that it works.
yeah.
And, yeah, it's good.